What's up?
What?
I was looking at the camera.
It really means a lot to hear from you, man. I know we still have a lot of shit to talk about, but we have time to get to that. I hope we do hang when you're home. I'll smoke you in a couple games. I don't know what, of ball. He meant to say ball.
Of basketball.
Yeah. Thanks for reaching out, means a lot. I hope we can keep it up. Love you, Willie. A big heart. Your long lost brother, Jackson.
Yeah, he always said that. He said that in my voicemail too. He said, don't forget about your long lost brother out here in California.
Dude, what's the deal here? I've been calling you. Call me back. Come on. Don't forget about your brother out here, your long lost brother. Call me back, Fuzzy.
There was a lot of stuff happening in that last week. Trying to figure out where to start.
What time of year was it?
March. I guess I can start from there.
I think every time I step on and start the engines, I always think about Jack. I'm like, we're ready to go.
I don't like to go fast. Kevin and Jack, they like to, push you right to the edge.
He loved going fast. He loved being in power. He loved to fish, being out in the water and kind of not having a worry in the world.
Yeah, Jack was just gonna be good at whatever he didn't think too much about and just went and did it.
The one thing that I am always gonna regret is not letting Jack know that I love him so much as my brother. That I didn't get to tell him that more, regardless of anything that happened.
Suddenly I feel the weight upon my shoulder, closer than before. The white fear shadows creeping in. I would like to disappear for a little while and wait until the crowd clears. Rest my eyes of only
nothingness. At that time,
at that like sunken period of just being fucked up and high, he explained to me you sink into this place of nothingness where you don't feel guilty, you don't feel bad, like you just feel good for a moment, and it's worth it for that moment of quiet.
Rocky Point is the jetty area, 30-second walk from our house, where when we were little, we used to go fish off of the rocks and run around and jump on the rocks. As we got older, mostly the place that we would go smoke weed, like away from our parents. I was the younger brother, and he was just like, I'm gonna make you sit on the sideline for the most part. But that was when I was a bit younger, and it changed as we got older.
I mean, when I start going back through the details, yeah, I get real fucking angry. It's just like it's like you could have been here now. And I was his older brother. And so, like, I mean, you can, like, my dad could say, well, I was his father, or my mom could say I was his mother, but I was his older brother, so it makes me feel like I should have brought fucking tissue.
Growing up, I loved having brothers. We're all pretty much 2 years. 2 years in between me, Henry, Jack, Will. I think a year between our other brother, Harrison. On one hand, I was younger and I was less exposed to everything he was doing, so I was always first to forgive. He didn't want me to see him like that. He wanted me to see him as this powerful, strong, amazing older brother, and a lot of times he just felt like he was letting me down.
Did he let you down?
Yes and no.
I wish I could have told him, like, don't you know that shit will kill you type of thing. Like literally, I will kill you myself before I let you kill yourself with this. Like, that's what I wish I had said to him.
Loved going to the beach. We were beach bums to the max. We would just chill out there, grab a burrito from the taco shop, get back out on the beach, and just sit there all day, get in the water. And the most of our time was on the beach together. And I would ask him about when we would have deeper conversations, like the future. He would always say, like, he never saw himself past the age of 30. But he would always wish to grow old together, but he said that he didn't think it was gonna happen for him.
I think it started out recreationally, and then I feel like he was going through shit. It was a mixture of like him loving the feeling, and it was his escape to whatever was going on at home.
Yeah.
Whatever was bothering him deep down, like that's what was the only thing like that detached him. I just think like the reason why we didn't like step in again, he convinced us very well that he was under control. But even with like the pot smoking and the drinking, like Mrs. Connery was always on top of it. Mm-hmm. Like, look, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. And I think when it came to the pills, like we were just so used to her already being on top of him, that it was just like normal.
Yeah, it's like we didn't need to tell her because she already knew.
She knew,
We felt like she had that covered.
Good people helping me out. Yeah, I've got good people there when I'm down. Yeah, I've got good people lifting me up when I'm low. I'm lucky, I know. Good people, lucky, I know. Lucky, I know.
I'm not an expert. I'm a mom. And that's what I was. I was a mom. So I didn't have the information. I was raising younger children, and Jack was spinning out of control. You're in this crisis situation where you're fearing for your child's life and your own life because it's so, you're so afraid. I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid if a police car drives by. I'm afraid when the phone rings. I'm afraid of the door knock. I'm afraid of everything because I don't know what's around the corner.
It's very difficult to know for sure in the beginning when someone has a serious problem because you have no reference point. It's not like, oh, I've seen this before, so therefore I'll know when something happens and something's changing. There were a number of events along the way which weren't good. And even when I was uncovering the issue that Jack had, I didn't know how big it was. I didn't know how serious it was. It's very different when you can look back and go, all those things were happening, versus you're in the middle of something trying to manage what now is some unfolding, serious addiction that's building and you don't even know.
It's one of those things, gee, how did I miss it? In my own personal experience, when you're a mom, having your kid come home from a party or a football game or whatever, and you usually do the sniff check, are they smoking or are they drinking? But there's no way to really detect if they're popping pills. The signs are not as obvious as they are from what traditionally parents would look for.
What is wrong on the federal level?
What is wrong now is difficult to say. What was wrong a decade ago was glaringly obvious. Nobody was paying attention. So when you have a Controlled Substances Act, and the very nature of it is to protect the American people, the agencies just were asleep at the switch. So we were only losing, 10,000 people a year, then 15, then 20, 25. At what point in time were they going to wake up and recognize they had a serious epidemic on their hands? The lobbying against prescribing, the overprescription of opioids. The AMA wasn't exactly happy, thinking that they might have had a role in it, nor the, let's go down the myriad list of people who had some sort of a little role in it, and nobody wanted to admit it. But it's complicated because the very nature of potent, powerful opioids and addiction, and then throw on top of that stigma so people don't want to talk about it necessarily, and then throw on top of that big money working against you, it's sort of a perfect storm.
If you had the medical system, which honestly couldn't give a damn, and by the way is complicit in this crisis, and the AMA and all of them have been missing in action, MIA, while people with addiction and mental illness are POWs. They're prisoners of their war injuries, which is the trauma that they sustain, the illness they sustain, and the stigma and shame they sustain, and no one's going in there to set them free. We're gonna build a big addiction center for you. We're gonna have countless hundreds of billions of dollars and trillions of dollars to have a war on cancer, addiction for you, because we care as much about your life being a quality life with longevity as we do trying to discover the molecules that have now eradicated most childhood cancers. That's not an accident. We've spent billions of dollars coming here. And did anyone ever question whether that was the right investment? Of course not. No Republican, Democrat. They said, oh, this is good. When are they going to do that for these illnesses? Because, by the way, these illnesses are here to stay. Don't feel ashamed. Here's the program we need you to follow because we care about you, we love you, you have dignity.
It was just like, every night we were fighting. I was always trying to catch him do something. Like I would come home from work early, I would, stay on this place and then come home to try and figure out what he was doing. Or if he left, I would go through his things. I would go through his phone when he was sleeping. And I would just try and I just knew that it was just too much.
There was at some point, his activities started to, split into two, where, he was doing everything out in the open before, and, we were keyed in on all of that, and then there was stuff that started to happen in, this different persona of his, where he would start to do all that stuff behind our back, and he would shield us from that. I think he really didn't want us to know that side of things.
When it really became different, when his friends also, who got into some of that same stuff as well, all kicked off and realized that this was not good, and then he was the one that kept going down the same path, while everyone else was like, all right, this is clearly not okay. And they started watching out for him too, and then that started to develop his diversions from those people that were his closest friends for so long.
Sometimes you're an ocean, sometimes you're the sea, sometimes just a raindrop on the street. But sometimes you're a river wide, you're a waterfall. Sometimes you're the
What I found out later, that he was actually suffering from something. And that's what addiction is. It's an escape from suffering at some level. And suffering is different for different people.
Sometimes it hits me in waves and I'm drowning. 'Cause sometimes you just disappear, sometimes you're pouring down, sometimes you are quiet in the clouds, but sometimes you are raging, sometimes you are the storm, sometimes you envelop me, sometimes you keep me warm, and sometimes it hits me in waves.
When you grow up in a family, an event might happen and it's different for one sibling to the other. It just depends what affects you.
How did you learn that he was suffering after the fact?
I learned from following Gabor Mate and just researching.
Raise your hand if you have an addiction in your life. Virtually everybody raises their hand. Well, don't tell me what you're addicted to or when or for how long. Just tell me what the addiction did for you. What did you like about it? And people will say, it numbed my pain. People will say, it helped me escape. People will say, it helped relieve my stress. It gave me pleasure. It gave me contact with other people. It gave me a sense of control. It gave me some inner peace. Well, pain relief, escape from stress, inner peace, contact with other people, a sense of controlled agency in your life, these are beautiful human qualities. We all want them. They're what we have a right to expect from life. The real question then becomes, how did you lose that sense of agency in your life? Why did you feel so lonely with 7 billion human beings on the earth? What left you feeling so isolated? What gave you so much pain that you had to escape from it? Why did you have to numb yourself? What stresses were you not able to handle? In other words, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. 2 things can go wrong in childhood. One, when things happen that shouldn't have happened. But the other is when things don't happen that should have happened. Which is a child being not loved, because most children are really loved, but seen, understood, attuned with. And that, especially for sensitive kids, can hurt as much as if somebody hit them. And this child, in retrospect, we can clearly see he's been asking for help since he was a young child. But nobody could see his cry for help. They just saw behaviors.
It really depends on context a lot. This is not to say that all addiction comes from trauma, but extreme stress is a very common experience amongst people with addiction. And when you're talking about opioids, this is particularly true because opioids are part of the brain system that allows us to relieve stress by bonding with people. And if you don't have that, the opioid's going to give you that feeling of being warm, safe, and loved, and you're going to be super attracted to that. If you do have that, the feeling from the opioid just isn't the same. Like, there will be people who have told me, oh man, I took this opioid, it was the most euphoric thing ever, I loved it, it was great. So I knew I could never do it again because I didn't want to risk my marriage, my house, my cat, my kids, and you know, it really, all of this is contextual.
Loose cannon. I don't know if you know the term loose cannon. Well, the term really comes from what's happening below the deck. And there's a story about there are 4 people on a boat, and the boat looks like it's taking on water, and there's a huge cannon underneath that's flying underneath the boat, putting holes in the boat. And if somebody doesn't tie the cannon down, the ship's gonna sink. And it's not what's happening on the surface, it's what's happening below. And it's a metaphor for what's happening in people's lives. You can look fine on the outside, but what is the loose cannon in your life that no one knows about, that's maybe eating away at you or it's affecting you? And that was something Jack had that we didn't know. And there were some things that didn't come out. And unless you know how to go and secure those things in your own personal life or Jack's, what can happen? Bad things.
I miss you and I wish you'd call me home again.
Happy birthday. Hi.
But I want
You're 15. Oh my gosh. Can you believe it? That is major trouble, Jack.
I'm still here, so when I make it last.
Come on. Because you gotta get up now. It's time to come down.
I would say he was like more badass than I was, if there's like a way to put it.
Class clown.
Yeah, that's
very always
trying to make
down
someone
for a
laugh.
joke or to make somebody laugh.
I always wanted to be like him. I wanted that presence that he would bring into a room.
Mischievous. And my mom, who's from Scotland, she would call him cheeky.
You know, some people would say he was like a troublemaker. Anyone who said that outside of my family, you know, I didn't really, you know, it's whatever. He's my brother. He's cool.
Scott and my brother, Scott is my brother's friend, who being interviewed for some newspaper after a lacrosse game, and they asked him if there was one friend who you would want in a foxhole, who would it be? And he was like, Jack Conrad, because he's just always got your back, and he's always like put to the point. It's like there's running from the cop and then there's trying to tackle the cop. He's like somewhere in the middle of there.
Yeah, he's a fucking wild dude. He definitely acted invincible all the time. And I think that people were kind of drawn to it in a way.
Mommy! Yes. I made a touchdown for our team!
Wait, hold on. I can't, when you're back, I can't see it. What's the score?
I made a touchdown for the team!
What's your score? What's the score, kid?
1-1!
What team are you on?
My daddy.
We should get out there.
No matter like how much bad shit that he would do at the end of the day, like you still kind of like, were like, you know, it's Jack, whatever.
Like, even if he wasn't having a good day personally, like, he wouldn't let it show. It was like the exact opposite. He could just make anyone laugh.
What was the exact opposite?
Well, he was hurt inside. He was hurting a lot.
Did he tell you that? Or did you feel that?
I could feel it.
So I'm a teacher. I teach 7th and 8th grade. And every year I would talk to 7th and 8th graders about that kid.
All right, Jack.
Jack Conroy was the kid who would find the abandoned house in the middle of the woods, or he would find the spare canoe somewhere that could be taken out, or pick up the snake in the grass. You could say that, oh, gee, man, that's pretty reckless or that's pretty careless. But I didn't look at it that way. I sort of liked that spirit that he had.
If you're stuck in your own way, stir it up, stir it up, stir it up. If you're thirsty, then it's on me. I'll stir it up, stir it up, stir it up. When you're ballin' but you don't play, you wanna get good on a bad day. But you're stuck in the same place. Stir it, I stir it up, stir it up, stir it up.
I do think of him like an archetype. I don't like to think of Jack as the drug addict. So in that sense, I always thought of him as Huckleberry Finn, always up for an adventure, always the kind of kid who was willing to do something sort of unspeakably enthusiastic.
From a very young age, Jack had to be on the go because that just, I don't know, it filled a void that, I don't mean in a negative way, I mean in a positive way. He didn't like to sit around in the house and watch the movies or read a book.
And who's in the middle? Jack. Jack who?
Giacomo.
Giacomo who?
Giacomo. Giacomo Ganu.
Some of the pictures when he's a young boy, I think of happy and carefree. And energy.
Well, it's just too easy to all of a sudden turn from thinking of him as Huck Finn to suddenly thinking of him as Icarus, when he flew too close to the sun. And that makes him into a tragic figure and really emphasizes some sort of character flaw.
At the time, I don't think I ever thought it could lead him down the wrong path. I thought it was adventurous. It was a little like I am. We're pushing the envelope. We're going to keep on going. We don't have to slow down. We're going to have fun. So I really didn't think it was reckless.
So Kevin, does Jack take after him? Does he have some certain traits within him that you could recognize? Besides the fishing.
Besides the fishing, yes.
What?
Just high-spirited, big personality. They're very, very similar.
Yeah, he was so much like my dad. Scary. I think that's why it was so tough, because they did the most together.
And I always pictured him being more like my dad, because I grew up rejecting what my dad wanted me to do, which was fish. I was the musician, he was the fisherman, and then Henry was always the smart one. That's how we sort of categorized ourselves.
Merry Christmas, Jackie.
I think he was a very capable person in a lot of ways, but I don't think that he was set up for the way, the education system that we have right now, which is where you get kicked out of a school, you don't do well in school, yet you can see that this person is capable of all sorts of things, but people keep telling you that you're stupid or that you can't, that you're not good in the way that people are supposed to be good to become successful later on, which, and that wasn't the case for me. I don't even think that for whatever reason, I could just go and, school was all right, it's not that hard to get A's and B's, and it was pretty easy for me. But there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't do that he could do, work with his hands, figure out, start kind of his own small businesses, if you'd call them that, which is selling weed, but still he was really good at it, made a lot of money.
You can see it from the first time he goes to school. This kid had ADHD. Nobody saw it, but he did. Poor impulse control. Just acting out. Whatever occurs to him, he'll just do it. Now, armed with that knowledge and that awareness, if I see a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old with ADHD, I say to the parents, okay, this is a very sensitive kid. They're very sensitive to what's going on in the environment. So what is going on in the environment? What's happening in the family? How are the parents getting along? How stressed are the parents? And when the child acts out, how do you respond to him? Do you punish him? Or do you get the message that this is a plea for help, for relationship?
When you're out there now, what do you think about when you're out there on the water?
I still love going on the water, but I always miss Jack because I know he loved it. And we recently bought a new boat, and I know Jack would have loved it because he wanted to go fast. And I wish he could have been around for the new boat because it's fast.
Jack, Papa. Happy birthday, Papa. Birthday, Papa. Bye-bye.
When he was a little boy in Martha's Vineyard, and he would go fishing with me all the time, one morning, I didn't wake him up.
And Jack got up and said, "Where's Dad?" I'm like, "He went fishing. He's down by the dock." And Jack got on his bike.
I was getting on the boat. He came flying down on his bike.
Skidded up to Kevin, like in the dirt, if you can imagine.
Slid his bike sideways, dropped it, and said, "Don't ever leave me behind."
What was your answer?
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Don't make me read your mind. You should know me better than that. What? It takes me too much time. You should know me better than that.
I had called his dad that morning at work, and I said, "I'm not a professional. I can't do this anymore." I thought by me being who I am, I have a good head on my shoulders. I thought I love Jack and giving him so much love, and I thought that I could help him by just loving him. And I said, I can't, he's doing stuff, and I can't do it, Kevin. He needs to go back, and he would break up with me. He would resent me for the rest of his life if I told you this, but you need to come out here and you need to send him to a facility right now. Like, as I'm speaking to you right now, you need to pick him up. Like he said, like, don't stir the pot, don't do anything, just, I'll take care of it. I gotta go right now, but thanks for telling me. I won't tell him you said anything.
Maybe someone else with more of an aerial view on the situation might have been able to tell you that Jack was on this path. So much of what I saw is so normal around here. Parents are super rich. They have big houses that they don't exactly know what's going on in them all the time.
There's probably a lot of families around this area that have a lot of anti-anxiety medication that I think can quite easily tie into the children. Either they steal it or maybe it's given to them, but one way or the other, it's getting into the hands of the kids.
We may say we'll quit, but we never do. We say we don't give a shit, but that's just the truth. And we may all need some help, but who's got time for that? Well, when the liquor starts flowing, there's no turning back. And we may not remember what happened last night, but it's
all for the better. We're just some fucked up kids having fun together.
I didn't know him, but I've known a lot of Jacks. I've known a lot of kids who grew up in loving families, upper middle class neighborhoods, a lot of opportunities in front of them, and yet they succumb. So when people tell me this is about poverty, I have to say, you know, we all want to address poverty for lots of reasons, and there's no question there's a high level of despair and lack of hope in some of our poorest communities, and I think that does contribute to it. But it's more complicated than that.
So, you know, my experience in how universal this affliction is when I was a member of Congress and I had gotten a DWI that obviously was very public, and I went to rehab. When I got back from rehab, I had gotten a lot of cards, get well cards, interestingly enough, from members of Congress that I never knew before. You know, that I'd walk through the hallways and give them a quiet hello, but I really didn't spend any time with. And I went to their offices afterwards to thank them. And invariably they'd, you know, when a member of Congress comes in, they have staff, and you've got your staff, I got my staff, the staffs talk to each other and they do all the work. But in this case, to a person, each of my colleagues would say, no staff. And then they would tell me a harrowing case of addiction in their own life, or in their child's life, or in their spouse's life. And this wasn't just one or two members. I tell you, this is dozens, household names, leadership in the House and the Senate. And they said to me they'd really never told anyone else. And the reason was because there was no one that they knew had these problems.
It's these neighborhoods with the money that are the most susceptible, I think. And I feel like if parents find out that their kids are on heroin or opioids, they're gonna try and keep it quiet because they don't wanna have their friends know. And it's like this huge stigma that it's like, okay, we can't tell anybody about this.
I mean, we have neighbors that like won't even still look at us because they're like afraid of our family.
And what do you want to tell them?
Fuck you.
Everybody, I think, just wants to appear that their lives are perfect, I think, when so many lives are so messed up.
I'm often speaking to parents who have a son or daughter addicted, and they're asking my advice. And I say the following. I say, first of all, I haven't met your son or daughter, but I can almost guarantee you that they feel ashamed. What's fundamentally really needed is to change the way that we think about this disease, the stigma we attach to it. In a recent poll, more than 80% of Americans said they are not comfortable associating with someone as a friend, a coworker, or a neighbor who is addicted to prescription opioids. How does that make those who are addicted feel? Knowing that most of society wouldn't want you as a neighbor, dating their daughter, working at their company, or working alongside you. I've talked to thousands of Americans addicted to opioids, obviously including my son, and I've never met one who reached up to the sky one day and asked to become addicted. Science tells us this is a chronic illness, just like any other disease. Most of the public doesn't understand that.
I think as a parent, it's just so confusing, right? Don't really know what you're looking at, right? And therein, again, lies the problem. Who do you go talk to? I mean, who do you ask about? I mean, I think you start asking your neighbors, but maybe not even because it's so stigmatized, right? So I think parents are really, really trapped.
Parents need therapy too. And parents need peers who understand what it's like to go through this. It's hard for people to understand, for a parent to say, I've had to kick my son out of my house. And for another parent to not be judgmental or to not understand what's actually happening. And so I guess my point here is that you have to find peers who've been through it, who are going through it, or professionals who really know what you're going through and know how to help advise you on what good steps might be.
Well, it's an interesting issue for politicians because some of it is stuff you can legislate on. Other things I think are just so highly personal and maybe people are uncomfortable talking about it. I think we have made a change in our country that's reflected in the Congress over the past several years, which is Congress has begun to look at this as an issue of addiction and one where it's a disease like other diseases.
Parents were to come to you with all the experience you've had interfacing with other parents. They come to you and they say, my son or daughter is addicted. I just found out. I've become aware of it. What's my first step? What do I do?
Hug them. Because it's tough. It's really tough.
I saw it start with prescription from a friend, someone who was getting overprescribed.
He went to college. He went to Endicott College in Beverly, Mass. And his roommate, who was a friend of his, was taking Klonopin.
So whatever therapist or psychologist he was seeing prescribed him to Klonopin. So Jack found that as an opportunity to take Klonopin and abuse it. He would like ask for it all the time.
From what I understand, that's when the pills started.
You know, experimenting with Xanax one night. That's something that we did here and there, but
Did you guys all experiment with opioid?
I tried it like twice and I got super sick and I just never did it again. It just
How
was.
did you take it?
I think I snorted it.
Yeah, I think, I was introduced to it through him, and it's not something I did regularly, but if it was around and, like, let's say he was doing it with somebody else, or if it was just out and it was around, I might try it.
Well, oxycodone, hydrocodone, OxyContin, right? It was, Percocet, Darvon. These are some of the brand names, right? It became pretty clear that he was one of those kids who developed an addiction very quickly. You can see in the descriptions of his behavior that, this really did start right away. So we have kids who, during their adolescence, that's when you're supposed to be learning how to manage all of these, hard feelings and everything else. And if you can't face them or you're using drugs to kind of diminish those feelings rather than learning other ways of managing them, and you can get caught in this real trap of having no other coping skills.
And as I say, most people who try most drugs, even repeatedly, never become addicted to them. So the question is, why is it that some people, they do the drug the first time and right away they feel like they should have felt all their lives? Not because the brain has changed instantaneously in 3 seconds. What nonsense is that? Scientifically, it's bunk. What has happened is that something that's been missing all their lives is now present for them, which is physiologically true and emotionally true. That's why they'll go back to it and go back to it and go back to it.
I think the perks were the only thing that took control of him, obviously, right? Like, that was just one thing that he just couldn't control. Like, that was like his kryptonite. I've never seen anything take control like the way perks did to Jack.
Went, got ice cream, sat out on the dock over here, and I asked him, because I didn't always get a straight answer from my parents, so I was like, what are blues? Like, what are, like, this that I'm hearing? Why do you do what you do? Like, I need to have an honest conversation with you. And he explained to me, these are...
they would be referred to as blues. It's like the 30 milligram Percocet. Yeah, you just like crush them up and sniff them.
You sniff them?
Yeah.
Because it gets in your bloodstream quicker, is that what it is?
I don't really even know. Monkey see, monkey do.
So he was sniffing them?
Yeah.
So the kids have learned to take that and scrape off the time-release coating.
But if you swallowed it like you were supposed to, it was released slowly over time so that you wouldn't have this big effect. But if you crushed it up, that time release mechanism was gone. And if you crushed it and then snorted it, didn't actually have to go through your stomach and be absorbed through your digestive system. It went straight into your bloodstream and straight to your brain. And so things that get to your brain faster are both more pleasurable, but also more addictive.
Unfortunately, it's like one of the best feelings probably I've ever felt, but like so good that it'll kill you.
So yeah, I came home and he was cooking dinner and went out and came back and I sat outside and he brought dinner, or he said dinner's ready. I came inside and I just acted like everything was fine. And I was like trying to just live through the next couple days until his dad could come and pick him up or someone came and picked him up. I knew something was happening and I was like, just get through the next couple days. Don't like try and stir anything else up. And then we were gonna watch a movie together and I was like, I gotta go to bed, Jack. I haven't been sleeping because we've been fighting all throughout the night and I have to get up for work. Come on, he was like, I'm getting on a right track for you or something. Like, you can't just watch this movie with me or something like that. I was like, Jack, like, I need to go to bed. I'm the one making the money for us to live in this place. So you're not in a sober living home and, we're not at my parents' house. And we just got into it. And I went to bed around 10 or 11 o'clock.
He didn't answer you when you had said that things.
We fought.
Right, but you don't remember the last words to you after you had said I have to go to bed.
I think he was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this movie then.
What movie?
It was the one with Reese Witherspoon where she was going out into the wildlife.
But I did not know for a long period because it's this thing that you can't put your fingers on. It wasn't like I walked in the door and said, oh, I know you have an addiction. And then you keep moving forward until something more serious happens and you go, wait a minute, what is this? Some started with he was stealing. And he was stealing from us because he needed money to take care of the pills that he was buying.
Eventually, I know that he took money from me, but then I got those habits too. Then I started taking money from people, and he accused me of taking money from him, and it just would get messy at times.
And you needed the money, obviously, to get more.
Yeah, those things are $30 a pill, and it's Jack would take 5 a day.
I had said to him that I'm disappointed in him as an older brother, and I could see that he felt that in his eyes. It was in a situation where he was trying to steal stuff from my closet while I was asleep.
What was he trying to take?
Cigarettes.
You smoke?
I would think it was the only box of cigarettes I've ever bought in my entire life.
Why did he want it?
I had 3. I don't know. He wanted to smoke the cigarettes, and I was like, those are mine. He's like, you don't even smoke. I was like, it's the principle of it. Why do you have them? I don't know. It's just somebody gave them to me.
I went up to Jack's room to look. I don't know if I was actually looking for weed because sometimes he would just have big bags of weed there and I would just take some. But I don't know if I was even looking for that or I was trying to find out other stuff that he might have taken. And I found a bunch of jewelry and rings and stuff. And so I grabbed it and I went down and I was like, Mom, is this stuff yours? And she was like, it was fake stuff. But then she took that stuff and then went to where she knew that it was.
So when it really got bad is when he stole my jewelry and my laptop and pawned them. And then when Will told me, I went back in and I found that my engagement ring and watches and diamond earrings were all gone.
Yeah, the wedding ring really shocked me because it was, I mean, it was like $10,000 or something more. And he like sold it for like $200.
Then we don't uncover he's stealing a little bit, but it's really a lot more because you become very crafty. That's the nature of addiction, especially opiate addiction or something along those lines, where you become secretive and you figure out how to do things no matter what.
There's a point where I stopped seeing Jack for a little bit because not only was he like doing perks the heavy, but he was also like lying about it. This is when he was like saying that he was clean, but I knew he wasn't clean.
Did that affect your friendship?
I didn't like get mad at him or anything. I still love Jack.
It affected yours. Is that what you're nodding?
I think it affected our friendship as far, like, not just mine, but you know, we had our little group, and I think it definitely started to wear on people.
Yeah.
Hindsight's 20/20, and you're like, you know, I would have loved to do absolutely everything I could to help, but at the time, it's like, he's lying to my face. He's not being straight with us, disappears, comes back, you know, misses out on stuff. It's hard not to get at least a little, you know, upset about it.
Until a lot of those friends seem to be like, you're too messed up all the time. We don't really want any part of this. And then like all of a sudden he had this like new set of friends that were like cool with it. And then even those friends kind of fizzled out after a while. And then it just seemed like it was like just Jack.
Well, Jack would say, it's like my job. I need to get up. The minute I open my eyes is, where am I getting it? I don't care how. I don't care where I'm getting the money, but I need to get it. That's what he did all day, is to figure out how to get his drugs. So he would, whether he took my money, whether he took my credit card, whether he stole his sister's Christmas money, like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It's because the cravings are so great that nothing would stand in the way. And Jack loves us. He loves me. It didn't matter.
The confusion in a mother's mind is incredible. And the need for answers is just agonizing. It's agonizing. And from an addict, I remember I reached out once to parents like that, and I said, you need to understand something. You need to understand this very clearly. This is business. This is not personal. And they all looked at me. They didn't know what I was talking about. I said, you people were noise that were in my way. You were not my relatives. You were nothing. You got in the way, and you were noise, and it's business.
So there are neurologic changes, right? The cells in the brain actually change, and the part of the brain that is affected in addiction is the pleasure and reward center, right? And so that becomes absolutely retuned to seek drugs above all else. And it's illogical, it's irrational.
So if you think that your child has stopped loving you, I said, I didn't stop loving anybody, but I needed to get you out of my way, and I was going to hurt you as badly as I could possibly hurt you to get you to go away, until the point where you pushed away too much, and then I was going to make you feel guilty for having hurt somebody that had such a disease. So I was going to torture you. I was going to get you when you came too close, and I was going to get you when you tried to pull away too far. And I became the master of manipulation.
And you believe him.
Sure.
I mean, he's so convincing. I mean, that's like, I trust every word out of his mouth. Everybody else is telling me he has a problem, he has a problem, he has a problem. But then when I talk to him, you know, alone, he's just like, dude, don't listen to everybody else. I got this. Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah.
Even if you caught him doing something, he could come to you and you're like, I just watched you do that. And he's like, and I'm like, It's either you believe him or you love him so much that you'll just go along with this lie with him.
I mean, you could say that these things stem from the addiction. I understood that it's more complicated than that, but it's all that, the lying, the stealing, but maybe a lack of understanding of how those things, for me, a lack of understanding of how those things tie into the way that you're altered by such a drive to need to self-medicate.
It would be one of those things where he'd think he was fooling us, and he would have been if he wasn't, under the influence. But that's like the sort of the nature of the beast, where it's like, where we could tell because it had just taken over him so powerfully that the side of him that could fool us was sort of being exposed by whatever he was using at the time.
Obviously, there were some instances of, him just being so blatant about something that you're like, come on, like.
Yeah, and I think it really, by the time we were kind of stepping in like that more, it was like, at this point, he's like passing out when we're he's like nodding.
Yeah, nodding off.
Yeah. We were driving with my mom, and he was talking in the back seat, and I remember just like turning to him. He was talking just like real like kind of like mumbly. And I don't believe he was like on any pills at that point, but he was just talking in a way that triggered my ear, and I had just like turned around and I was like, can you please speak with some fucking sophistication? Or I think I actually literally said that. And I still feel bad about that because he started crying when I said it. And and I think I hurt his feelings. And he had been, struggling through all of this, and I may have had a cold shoulder to the whole experience at that point, where I should have had more of an open heart, I guess.
And he would do things like pick me up from school, like be late for lacrosse practice. And I'd be driving with him, and everything would seem fine. And then all of a sudden I look over at him, and he's like kind of blanked out at the wheel and like has drool coming down from his mouth. And I got so terrified. I was like, holy shit, like you're driving me home. Like, I don't think you should be driving. Like, I just saw you just drooling all over himself at the wheel. He was so fucked up. He was chasing me around the house, trying to apologize. He's a big dude. I am a little girl. So it was scary seeing him. And it was almost like I knew he wasn't gonna do anything to me, but he kept just like grabbing me, trying to apologize. And like, I know his strength. I know that even if he didn't want to hurt me, he could have.
Well, Grace was young.
Will was gone at this point.
Will was gone, and Henry, I don't know, he was just like busy with school.
When I was, I don't remember how old I was, but there was a time where I remember, calling my dad in and saying, like, listen, I'm the man of the house at the time. My parents were separated, and this guy is, so dependent on it and kind of getting crazy. I remember calling my dad and saying, like, I am not capable of handling this by myself, because we would, get into near like pretty bad altercations. Well, the way that he would treat my mom, which progressed, a pretty tense relationship for a while, which then honestly kind of led to us not talking all that much.
We were separated for 3 years, but we went through this during that separation.
The details of how they separated, I think he had the majority of the burden as the oldest person in the household, and kept it to himself, probably trying to protect us as his younger siblings. And I think that caused, I'm not exactly sure what it caused, but any type of pressure like that, when you're holding it in, maybe some sort of anxiety or can cause some sort of a reason why you're trying to escape.
I went to bed. I woke up at 3:04 a.m. in the morning. I just woke up and I looked at my phone, and that's 3:04. And I looked next to me, Jack wasn't there. And I was like, I went Like, he should be in bed because he watched this movie and it's only a couple hours long and he should be in bed. I went outside of the bedroom and he wasn't on the couch. TV was on, but just like the screensaver was on. I went to the bathroom. The bathroom door was locked. I don't know, I was like panicking, so I was trying to find something to open the door. And then I went to the kitchen and that's when I realized, when I started looking for stuff, I saw a spoon with black on it. And I knew Jack, and I knew he like would fall asleep, so I was like, it hadn't really hit me yet, but I was like, okay, maybe he just fell asleep in the bathroom. Maybe he fell asleep on the toilet. I couldn't get the door open. I finally found something. I twisted the handle. I pushed and it wouldn't give. So then I started like kicking the door. And like I would run into the door. And like I would get like it would open a little, and then it would just close. And it was like something heavy was keeping the door closed.
So in your heart of hearts, as you examine your relationship with him, since that moment, did you leave him?
No. I never left him. There was a time when Barbara's and my relationship were not good, and I spent some time away from the house. But I never left Jack, and he knows that. He knew no matter where he was, that if he needed me, he could reach me. And when things started to get worse, I was absolutely with him, always.
When you have a child that's going down, do you support, and I hate to use the word enable because it's condescending, but do you enable that individual? Do you continue to support them for fear if you were to get mean and cruel and nasty and cut off support, they would harm themselves? Because many of these addicts and alcoholics will threaten to commit suicide. If you take away my money, you take away any of this, you don't know what it's like to be me, and so you always have one parent usually that'll say, I'm going to keep enabling, not knowingly so. And then the other end is cut it off. They're going to die anyway. And if you don't intervene, that person's not going to make it.
See, if you get between someone and their drug, it's dangerous. When you got in between Jack and his drug, it was scary. Because they'll do anything to get to their drug, whatever that is. And that's when things start to break down. I got in the way.
Okay, so here's the unique part of that. Jack's a big kid, 6'4", tough. He's a little imposing. And Barbara was nervous, and she didn't know what else to do. So she did draw that line.
Yes, because I had 2 other children who were responsible. You know, Henry was taking his SATs, Grace was doing her thing, you know, they're going to school on time, they had their lives. I couldn't have this chaos in the house, so he had to go.
Rehab is only good if the person takes responsibility for being there. You know, so many addicts get put there from their parents, you know, intervention, but they don't want to be there. So they're not going to take the responsibility. You know, you have to want to take the responsibility to heal.
What we're trying to get to with this film is that recovery should be more tailor-made for the individual on a case-by-case rather than you just need to go here, get better, and kind of like, you know, relegate it to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% the case. And we believe also that, you know, you should try and recover near your home because it makes no sense for you to go to Florida, California, Arizona, Utah, and then come back when all of your recovery experience and resources are where you got treatment. And so once you get back to your hometown, you don't have any recovery people that you met, you don't have any of your therapist. You don't know where any of the local recovery resources are in your hometown.
So what meetings are you going to? What recovery support groups do you have? What local resources do you have to help increase your wellness? Are you going to yoga? Are you increasing wellness through physical exercise? Is meditation part of your routine now to help you? So you're not able to mine the local resources as you would if you were going locally.
You know, the reality is that, you know, in many places, the bar for calling yourself a credentialed professional is really very low. All you really need is a high school diploma, right? And so they may not really understand the issues around brain function and medications and pharmacology and all of that stuff simply because they haven't had the training.
And anyone who promises that they're going to fix your kid or fix your loved one, right, is selling you a bill of goods that they cannot deliver on. So there has to be, I think, some standards that, you know, treatment centers are held to. And anyone puts anything out there on the web, you know, and people are desperate seeking, they're looking for help.
There are a lot of well-meaning people out there in the treatment system that are trying their hardest. But the education of those professionals and the tools and resources they need to do their job well has not been provided by our healthcare system.
Even though we knew that opiates were bad, we knew the pills were bad, we went to treatment centers for that, but I thought, we're gonna come out of this. We're gonna find the best place possible. And I'm gonna send you to a really good place, and they're gonna help you. And you're gonna get better, because you're gonna go down there and they're gonna teach you all the stuff that you're supposed to. Drugs are bad for you. Stay clean, hang around good people, stay in therapy, and you're gonna be okay. Yeah, you're gonna be okay. Isn't that what's supposed to happen?
Don't just rely on what you're told. Take the time to really understand what good treatment is and to ensure your son or daughter is getting it.
They told me, for instance, if Jack doesn't do everything you want him to do, you should pack his bags and put his stuff out on the street and let him go live on life's terms, which means that I get you have to draw a line. You can't let somebody take advantage of you. You can't give them money. You can't let them steal. You can't let them, you know, just have whatever. And we never did that with Jack. But the concept of, I guess would be the term tough love, pack my son's bags, put him out in the street, good luck. I never did that, and thank God I never did that, because if I did that and he passed away, I would never be here today. I would never recover.
So during that period, it was like a pattern. He would go to rehab, come back clean, be back in our home, trigger, right back into it, right back in rehab. I mean, it was a ridiculous cycle.
He worried. He said, Dad, I've screwed it up, and Mom is so mad at me, and I've screwed up my life. I'm like, no, you haven't. No, you haven't. You've done some damage. You've hurt yourself. But life is not over. We're just gonna have to keep fighting. We're just gonna have to keep pushing.
I still don't think in my head, I still don't think I got there that he was at that point. I still thought in my head that he was asleep. And I literally, I don't know if it was like adrenaline or what, but like I think as it started hitting me more and more, I think that's where the adrenaline came from. And he's 250 pounds. And I somehow got the door open. And he was leaning on the door like completely, like all the way completely. And I got in and I just, now that I'm like thinking about it, it's just like, I was like holding him. It was like me looking over us and like him also looking over us. Like just me holding him, like he wasn't there anymore. And I went and I went and got my phone. I had to get back out the door because I still couldn't move his body all the way, so I had to jam myself outside of the door. Called 911. They told me to like put my ear and see if he was breathing, and he wasn't. I think they might have asked me to check his heartbeat, but I said I couldn't feel anything.
Not until he came home and he was staying at a halfway house did he wanted to stay at our house so badly. My mom wouldn't let him because she was tough love. You can't stay here, you need to stay. And he just gotten his wisdom teeth out. And he's begging me, he's like, please convince Mom to let me stay one night, just want to stay in my own bed. So I did it. I was like, Mom, come on, like he's in so much pain, like just let him stay. Like I never get to hang out with him. He's only here for a little bit. And that night, I woke up and I went into my mom's room. I don't know why I woke up, and I was in there at like 5 a.m., which I never do. And my mom had told me that she walked up there and he was unconscious on his floor, like with a needle next to his arm. And I didn't even know, like, what do you do with a needle? Like, what kind of drugs is he doing? And at that point is when she told me he was doing heroin.
I think that's one thing I regret, is just not trying harder, not being there for him more. Being attached to his hip, like, dude, you're not doing this. Like,
like being attached to his hip, I think is a great point. I think like you need to be like, there's two ways of dealing with it. There's one, it's like you almost boycott that person and you like say like, we're not going to be friends if you keep this up. And like negative reinforcement almost never works in my experience. So you have to like be as close to that person as you possibly can. Like physically and emotionally, try to just attach yourself to them.
And the AA and the 12-step, is that applicable to opioid addiction?
Absolutely. So I was an opiate addict, daily opiate user for 6 years after I got addicted, before I got treatment. And my first knee-jerk reaction was, I'm not going to AA because my problem is with drugs. But once I walked into an AA meeting, I realized that I identified with lots of the people that were there, and they were all, many of them had used lots of different substances as well. What we find is so important is who you're connecting with and who you're spending your time with early on. We have a saying that, you know, if you hang out in a barbershop long enough, you're going to get a haircut, right? And so if you're hanging around with people who don't drink and don't take drugs, there's a good chance you won't drink and you won't take drugs. Conversely, if you're hanging around with the people that do drink and take drugs, it'll be very difficult to sustain your recovery, and you're likely to go back to your old habit.
So it wasn't a wrong crowd type of scenario.
It was not in the beginning, until later, when you are then involved with needing to get your pills, and later on, unfortunately, when it was so difficult to get the pills because it was so expensive, somebody said, oh, you really should try this. It's heroin. And it's easy to get, and it's inexpensive. And then it takes it to the next level. And now you're hanging around with other people that are not good. You still have your good friends around, they're still trying to help you, but you still have to go to places to get those drugs, and there typically are not a bunch of good people in those places. I think that was the next level where I'm like, we're really, really in a dark place, and we're really in trouble.
And Kevin knew immediately when I called him, because he knew the time. He knew it was by this time it was like almost 4 o'clock. So he knew right away. Why would Emily be calling me at 4 a.m. in the morning? Something happened.
You know, one of the biggest tell signs of an opiate overdose is extreme low, shallow breathing or no breathing at all. There's a lot of variables that we don't know until we get on scene. How much you've done, how long you've been doing it, without getting into a science lesson. It reduces your respiration severely. Your pupils go pinpoint, and sometimes you go into respiratory arrest. Narcan is is a brand name for naloxone is the name of the drug. The average layperson can use the nasal one. It's not with proper training. It really can be done by anyone.
So when you administer it, what happens? Do you know what the reaction is within the body? Where is it driving toward? The brain?
It's driving. Again, you're getting at the cellular level. It's going after the receptors that are inhibiting breathing.
And they were trying to resuscitate him for like an hour, almost an hour.
And the phone rang, and of course, I hate the phone. And it was Kevin. And he said, Jack is dead. It was 7 o'clock. Grace was in the shower getting ready for school.
I hadn't even gotten dressed yet. I hadn't even put my towel on. I was soaking wet, and my mom ran in and, in shock, just said, Jack's dead.
Grace called me like 80 times when I was sleeping, and I woke and she just said, Jack's dead. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I think the last time we spoke to each other, I had gone out for the night, and his girlfriend in California was friends with somebody that I went to school with. And I was like, hadn't talked to him for a while, and I had a few drinks, and so then I called him, and I told him I missed him, and then I wanted to like hang out, but yeah, there wasn't a lot of communication besides that.
I really thought they were going to bring him back. And I walked inside. I asked if I could see him one more time. And I just saw blood everywhere. And he was on the gurney, and it was just like so helpless. Like it was just like he was like a little boy almost that like was like crying for help and then never got the help. It just I gave him a kiss on the forehead. And I touched his hair one more time. And then they took him away.
Did you think that Jack wanted to OD, or did you think it was accidental?
It was accidental.
How do you know that about him?
Because he loved life. You know, he was in California. He was a beautiful girlfriend. He has an apartment. He has his surfboard. He was out every morning, 7 a.m. surfing. He didn't have a job yet. Was working on that. And I also went to a medium. And she said it was an accident. He didn't mean to die. And he's so sorry.
The toxologist said that, is that what you call him, a toxologist? Or the medical examiner. That's what we were waiting on to see the results, if he had meant to, if it looked like he meant to. And they said he definitely didn't mean to.
How did they know that?
It wasn't that much, but it was just enough for him.
Pain and anguish, insufferable pain. A true depth. And, you know, losing a child to anything, I've had friends who've lost a child to cancer. I've had friends who've lost a child in the military. There is that pain of always losing a child, but I think this one's different and unique. And I think part of it is because everybody in their heart knows it was preventable.
Last year, over 50,000 Americans lost their lives to this disease. 50,000 set of parents having to bury their child, compared to 50,000 that died in the Vietnam War, or a little slightly over 11 years. This is 10 times per year the amount of people dying in the Vietnam War, and it's getting almost no attention compared to what it should be.
I'm expert at pointing fingers as a legislator and a politician, but elevating and lifting up parents who have the courage and strength to face the issue and make others understand what they went through, I think is enormously valuable. There is nothing as powerful as a human face and voice. Statistics are a dime a dozen. I deal with them all the time, but a face and voice have much more power than numbers. We know in Connecticut there are more than 1,000 fatal overdoses now every year, but every one of them has a family.
And any given week, I am seeing at least, 7 to 8 people who have lost children to addiction. Okay. And it's drug addiction, whether it's heroin or whatever else they're taking, it's epidemic.
From the day you first realize that you have a problem with the substance abuse until the day that you seek treatment, it averages 4 years. So there's a lot of damage and harm that can happen in that time period. And from the day that you seek treatment until the day that you have achieved 1 year of continuous sobriety, so we call that sort of longer term recovery, that averages 8 years. So there's lots of fits and starts in that time period, and you can be doing well for a period of time and then have a relapse and a setback. Think about it, we're doing treatment for 28 days, maybe 90 days, but research suggests that you need to be vigilant for 8 years.
Many of the parents I speak to, their son or daughter is addicted to opioids. And there's many aspects of good treatment, but the most important thing is to make sure their son or daughter is offered one of the 3 medications that treat those who are addicted to opioids. It's not for everyone, but they should be offered it. There's methadone, there's buprenorphine, and there's naltrexone.
Basically, the treatment system for opioid addiction, it has always been these methadone programs. And so methadone is also an opioid, right? It's very much like heroin is, except that it has a very long half-life. So the idea is that you're giving somebody a drug that instead of having high highs and low lows is just sort of a more steady state. And it actually is a treatment that we've been using since the 1970s and works really well for people with opioid use disorder. But you can only get methadone in a specially certified methadone clinic, and it's pretty much unavailable to people under age 18.
This is one of the important options that can help people survive. Instead of going back and falling off and having an accidental overdose and dying, it still has some side effects, but you have a much better chance of living.
Trey and I were at Treating the Addictions up in Boston, and one of the doctors who sponsors this conference basically said, it's malpractice for someone with a doctor with a patient who has an opiate use disorder not to offer this as treatment.
We have a way of cutting the death rate from overdose by 50% or more. This means staying on one of 2 medications, methadone or buprenorphine. If you go to a treatment center that does not provide long-term access to those drugs and you leave it, you are at exponentially higher risk of overdosing immediately upon exiting.
So it's very, very important for this population to be offered this at the very least and have access to it, and certainly then be included in all the recovery communities, even though they are using medicated assisted.
We need to understand that if we're going to argue that addiction is a disease or any kind of public health condition, we have to go with what the research medical evidence shows, which is that medications reduce the mortality rate dramatically.
There are different recovery communities that have sort of said, "Ooh, well, you're on that, which means, you still have a little bit of this substance in you, so, you can't be part of our recovery community," and that has to stop. That's harming people.
Notion of you have to be clean before you come here.
Yes,
It's kind of
yes.
ridiculous.
This is where they should be.
I mean, if it were cancer, we'd be like, yay. If we AIDS, yay. We have these medications. Don't tell people to stop medication that's helping them. That's ridiculous.
I personally view addiction and trauma being linked, that if you treat the trauma, I think the addiction will go away as well. One of the things the foundation I work for, we've really gotten quite involved in is funding psychedelics. And so psychedelics as a modality to treat addiction, I believe, is going to be really where we can make a huge impact.
People can experience the deepest healing where they actually come to terms with their trauma so it doesn't haunt them anymore. And I've seen the transformative power. I've seen people with multiple suicide attempts get over their depression. I've seen people with PTSD get over their PTSD.
One of the great things about using a psychedelic like psilocybin as a treatment for addiction is that the drug itself is not addictive. And we know that at every possible level of scientific evidence. We know that in terms of the way it interacts with the brain. It does not hijack those brain reward dopaminergic circuits that all of the addictive drugs do.
And the way MDMA works is the amygdala part of the brain, which is your fear response, is overactive. And then when you're on MDMA, having the experience, the amygdala, the activity is lowered so that you can then retrieve really traumatic memories and talk about them and bring them up and work through them.
There's a particular plant which is relevant to opiate addiction because it can do like nothing else in the world can do. This plant is called iboga. It grows in Gabon in Africa, where it has been the plant used by certain tribes for spiritual healing and spiritual transformation for hundreds of years. That same plant has the quality that when you give it to somebody who's hooked on heroin, and I've seen this, I witnessed this personally, you do the iboga, and overnight, you don't have withdrawal symptoms from the opiates.
Typically what they'll do if you come in with, you've got heroin or oxycodone, you've got a dependence to that, they might give you another opioid substance like methadone or Suboxone, because that'll hit the same receptors, right? But it's not really clear why Ibogaine reduces those withdrawal symptoms, but that's a really marked effect, and that gives people a chance to stop using.
The way the addiction is interacting with their life, people can wrestle with that in a very deep, impactful psychological manner. Plenty of times people have described it as it's like doing years of therapy packed into a day. I mean, people wrestle with their demons, and they look at themselves and the aspects of themselves that are really hard to face. And in fact, it takes a lot of courage to go into one of these sessions and to have that sort of radical inspection of yourself.
But I think that the FDA can't argue with good science. There is stigma and there's a lot of social issues and perceptions of psychedelics, but I think when your loved ones are suffering and there's nothing out there that works, I think as a family member, you're willing to do anything.
We believe that there's multiple paths and multiple different, ways to initiate recovery, and I'm not sure I'd be opposed to any of them, right? If somebody is struggling with addiction and has been for years and years, and something might give them a chance, it's the same as if you had cancer and there was a, experimental drug that hadn't been approved. I would definitely take it, and that's personal choice, right? So if there was something that was going to help somebody initiate their recovery, sure.
The reason there's burgeoning interest in the use of these substances is because of the utter failure of the Western model to deal with mental health issues. We're complete failures. The best we can do is mitigate symptoms, No, I've taken antidepressants myself, and they've helped me, and I'm not against their use, but they're not the answer. They're symptom control. And that's maybe necessary and beneficial in cases, you know, I'm totally in favor, but they don't deal with the underlying issues.
The one thing that the House of Medicine has missed, and the House of Mental Health and Psychiatry, is that the spiritual component, I think, is so essential in overall health. I mean, if you're healthier spiritually, you're healthier mentally, you're also healthier physically.
Well, I think as human beings living in modern life, we need all the help we can get. So whatever direction it can come from is great. But I certainly think that yoga is a huge part of it. Yes, the physical practice of yoga, but you know, it's so much more than that. It's a sacred science, and I think it can be of use to bring any person back to their true nature. I would say that when someone is suffering from addiction, there's loss, there's the feeling of separation, often a missing connection to something greater than just what we're in that moment. And I've had a lot of people come to me who are in recent recovery or in the recovery process, some stage of addiction recovery in their life, and it's a grounding force for their recovery. It's kind of like a foundation. Their practice of yoga is a foundational place to continually remember that they're more than just the person with this affliction.
Addiction is a disease of isolation. I fight it every day. Some addicts, alcoholics like me, are isolated and introverted to the point where it's hard to get through to them with another human being or with words or with talk. I would be drinking again if I didn't take up photography. Hope is defined as a reasonable expectation that things can get better. And I became fascinated after my own personal experience with using art to break through to people, to be able to get them to actually touch a place in their heart where they're open to hope.
Where are we going with all this in terms of our drug culture and this dependency on drugs in America? We use more opioids than the rest of the world combined. There's no other country that comes close. And we've got to change our culture.
There's a lot of purpose and clarity that is coming from this experience for so many people that Jack is certainly a teacher. Yes.
He was just so powerful to me as a little girl. You know, I'd cross the street with him and my hands were so small, I would just hold onto his pinky. And he was so big, like just this big teddy bear that I could see was so deeply sad inside, and I just wanted to hug him and be there. A lot of time when I see his handwriting, because I'm so lucky to have these notes that he's written me. So I read those every time my birthday comes around. Dear Gracie, words can't even begin to describe how awful I feel about the things I've put you through. I'm supposed to be your older brother and a role model, but the only thing I've done is put a wedge in our relationship, which eats me up on the inside every time I begin to think of you. The things I have done should give you every reason not to trust me or want to be around me. I'm sick and didn't want recovery the last time around. But the actions I have taken to stay loyal to my drug has ruined my entire life, and every night I sit on my bed with a picture of you and me and Will and Hen all together, and I feel like I don't belong. I've spent so many years using drugs and training myself to not feel emotions that I have to train myself to feel again, which is something I've been struggling with. I feel like a scumbag for going through your stuff, stealing from Mom, and everything I've done to cause damage in your life. Sometimes I wish I could just end it and die so I wouldn't have to face the things I've done. But I really mean it when I say I'm lucky to be alive. This is my one and only chance to get myself better. This disease of addiction will kill every relationship I have managed to keep thus far. I miss you a lot and hope you're doing okay. I love you and hope to see you in the near future. I know it sounds selfish, but I need to fix myself before I can fix anything else. I'll always be here for you till the day I die. Love, Jacka.
may smoke too much till our lungs burn. We may take a pill when nothing hurts, and we may never sleep because the party's too good. We're women spent all our parents' money just 'cause we could. And we may not remember what happened last night, but it's all for the better. We're just some fucked up kids having fun together. We may say we'll quit, but we never do. We say we don't give a shit, but that's just the truth. And we may all need some help, but who's got time for that?